Hello, this is Ms. Pat from Samuel's Public Library. Our Science Scout project this week will be to see how to open and close acorns. You guys come into the library, you're going to get a kit. It will have a cup with hopefully a round acorn, a round pine cone, and a long skinny one. So you can see the difference in the two pine cones. We're going to learn how to open and close them. Okay, this one, they're both open right now. And I'll show you what I mean. This one's closed. Okay, you see how it's closed? We're going to do this one so that it looks just like this. We're going to set it up right now so that by the time I read the story, it's going to be all done. Okay, so I'm just going to put the round one inside my cup. I'm just going to pour cold water in. Okay. And you guys can see how open it is, right? We'll look at that when the story is done. So our story this week is called The Squirrels Who Squabbled by Rachel Bright. In a towering forest where summer had been, the leaves turned to gold as a cold wind blew in. And as autumn arrived with the sky raging red, the sleepiest creatures got ready for bed. While up in a tree swung a flighty young squirrel, who everyone knew as spontaneous Cyril. Now most foresty folk had seen to their needs through the plentiful months of mushrooms and seeds. They built up their stores so they'd all be well fed through the frosting of winter that glittered ahead. See how they all got food? They're all getting food. But Cyril, he lived in the now and the here. He had adventured and partied his way through the year. So his cupboard was bare, his hollow was empty. He hadn't a mouthful of food anywhere. But wait, what was that? Over there, take a look. A single lone pine cone wedged in a nook. He squealed with delight and for very good reason. For inside were the very last nuts of the season. I want you to look at that pine cone because that's going to look like ours, or ours is going to look like this when it's done. It's going to be all closed up. And he knows inside are nuts, seeds. But Cyril wasn't alone. There were more hungry eyes. Yes, plan ahead Bruce had his sights on the prize. Though he had gathered fresh treasures of every sort, Bruce was convinced he was one pine cone short. I simply must have it, he wistfully cried, as he dreamt of the fresh, juicy pine nuts inside. So as Cyril set off on his way to the ground, Bruce, he was also last pinecone bound. They sprinted and scurried with no time to gamble. They scratched at the bark in their scampering scramble. But their panic and haste shook the tips of the spruce, and the pinecone it trembled, and then it came loose. Both squirrels gave chase at a lightning pace. This was the start of a wild, nutty race. It's mine, shouted Cyril. No, mine, hollered Bruce. You don't stand a chance. Give up, it's no use. I'm hungry, cried Cyril. This cone is not yours. Stay back, shouted Bruce. This cone is for my stores. It boinged over bushes and flew through the air. It binged on the nose of a slumbering bear. It bounced over boulders, then came to a stop, and then teetered and wobbled and quivered and flopped. Both squirrels followed. Oh, the water was fast. Would they learn that they needed each other at last? But each was intent on how he would win. So they didn't quite notice a bird swooping in. Cyril and Bruce, they watched in dismay as their cone disappeared, up, up, and away. Come back, shouted Cyril. They're owl nuts, cried Bruce, but all hope was gone. It was simply no use. And meanwhile, they drifted right up to the ledge. Greed, it was driving them. What's that? Over the edge. Cyril and Bruce, they had taken a fall. They were paying the price for wanting it all. They had squandered their chances to team up and share. Would their nutty young hopes simply end in despair? Bruised and bedraggled, they swept past dry land. Cyril grabbed at a branch with a trembling hand. Catching Bruce with the other, he heaved and he huffed and pulled him to safety with panting and puffs. They dragged themselves up with sputtering wriggles. Then Bruce looked at Cyril and exploded in giggles. How silly we are, he managed to mutter. How greedy I've been, he proclaimed with a sputter. We shall change from today. May the squabbling cease. We should celebrate, seeing we're both in one piece. From that day and forward, they made a great pair. They would gather together and found they could share. Yes, Cyril and Bruce, they knew in the end, the best thing to share is a laugh with a friend. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about pine cones. What exactly is in a pine cone? Why were they arguing over it? What did they want? All right, so what are pine cones? And you've seen, right? This is what I just showed you, one open one. Right? This is the open one. This is the closed one. What are they though? You all have seen them, right? You've seen them on the ground. Sometimes you might see one day that's open and the next day it's all closed. Or maybe you find it closed and they're kind of really sharp and pokey and then it'll open. So pine cones hold and protect the seeds from pine trees. Did you know that? The whole pine cone isn't the seed. Okay, planting a pine cone isn't what's going to grow. But they're closed when it's too cold or too wet for the seeds to be out. It keeps them inside, it keeps them tight. And then during a blaze, the pine cone spines act as a fire shell. So remember I said this. So it's keeping the seeds right inside and it's protecting it from the fire. But the heat's going to dry the shell out. And when the shell is all dried out, it's going to open after the burn. And then the seeds are all going to come out. So when you see this thing down here, this is all the fire, or where it was a fire, and then the green stuff starts growing. And the first things that start growing usually after a forest fire is actually the pine cones, the pine trees. Okay, they'll be the first ones to grow because acorns, when they get burned, they're just dead. But when the pine cones get burned, they dry out and they open, and then the seeds come out and they start growing. Okay, but when the weather is dry, when the weather's dry, it'll open up. When it's going to rain or be wet or cold, it's going to close up. I do want to go back to this one. All right, so this one shows you that when it opens, there's a seed in there. It almost looks like the helicopter seeds. Okay, there's a flat seed inside each one of the pine cones. Okay, so inside on each one, now this one doesn't have it. I've already looked. Like this one has already dropped all of its seeds because it's open, so that means it's gotten hot. So the seeds have gone in there and they've all blown away. Now they may not grow though until after a fire. They kind of need fire to activate them, to grow. Whereas most seeds need sun and water and dirt, these kind of need really hot weather. Okay, now I do want to show you. Look at our pine cone. Okay, he's pretty much starting to close up, isn't he? Now he hasn't gotten as small as this one, but that's just because he wasn't as small as him. So you guys will get some pine cones. Some of them will be open and you can put them in a cup of water and see about closing them. You could do the same thing with this. Okay. And then if you have them closed and you have a hair dryer, or if you have a really hot spot outside, right? If you want to wait till the sun is out, put it on your windowsill when the sun is there, right? But if you have a hair dryer, right? You can put this on a flat plate or a pan and just put a hair dryer on top of it. Don't touch it. Don't put it up there. Don't stick it up there, okay? But then just dry it off. Now remember, I took this out of there, so he's kind of wet. He's still dripping on me. So it'll take a while for me to open him up. Okay, but that's one of the ways you can open it up. Don't stick them in the oven. Okay, I know that some of the things tell you to do that, but I'd rather you didn't. You could do a hair dryer because you should be able to put this on a flat thing and then just hold the hair dryer over it. Right. And then the more you do, he'll start opening up as opposed to closing up. Like I said, this one is kind of still dripping. Right. You can definitely see where he has started closing. Next time you guys go out, look for the pine cones on the ground. Right. You might find some of the seeds inside of them. If you guys want to do a bird feeder, you know, you can put the pine cone, put peanut butter on the outside, roll it in the thing. But remember, as it gets warm, it's going to open up. You wanted to make Christmas decorations, paint it green. You want it opened up, right? You want it to be nice and wide and open. Just like, okay, so just like this. Okay, if you wanted to paint this green, you got to remember, if you use spray paint and stuff, it's going to get wet. And what's it going to do? Close up. So you got to be real fast about it. Or you'd have to wait till it dries out again. It'll open up. And then you could put glue on little pieces and you could put not sprinkles, glitter in there. Okay. But if you want them open instead of closed, you're going to have to let it dry out in a nice warm place. Okay, you can put it on top of a heating event, not on top of a stove. That will start a fire, not in the oven. Okay, again, you can use the hair dryer, put it in the sun. You know, even though it's cold outside, put it in the sun. I know on Christmas it was really, really warm. So as you guys go around looking, as you guys go around hiking, especially if you go down by our storybook trail, down by the park, okay, look at the pine cones. And know that this meant it was cold or it's been wet. This meant it's been dry and it's been warm. Okay, so that's what these are. This one was a long skinny one. I had stuck him in the water earlier, as opposed to this one. And so he has closed up. Now he's also very, very waterlogged. So when you do take them out of the water, put them on a paper towel so that they can just dry out, and put them in the sun somewhere and they'll dry out and then they'll open back up. And you could do this over and over. And sometimes you might even see at the bottom, if it opens up or if it is opened when you stick it in there, the seeds might actually fall out and you might see the seeds at the bottom. Okay, but again, this one is kind of definitely closing. Okay, and I want you to see that it's definitely dripping. So just be real careful about moving it around. And you do have to be careful because some pine cones are very pokey. These particular kinds, when they're like this, it's not so bad. When they're closed like this, these are pokey. These ones have a lot of, right? And you can see the pokey stuff on them. These ones, they're not pokey at all. Okay, but that's one of the ways you can tell. Has it been dry in this area? Has it been warm? Right. Usually if they're underneath leaves, it's been wet, but it's also been warm. So you might find them half and half. Okay, and if they do open up, look for the seeds inside of them. If they're still on the tree, they got seeds in them. That's why those squirrel guys wanted them, right? There are seeds in them, and that's what they wanted to eat. Once they're on the ground, they could have already lost their seeds, but they're not going to start growing until after a fire or a really, really hot week. Okay, so have a good time. Hope this helps you. Look for stuff as you guys go out walking. And don't forget to come in on January 3rd and sign up for our winter reading program. Okay, we're going to be giving out some prizes just on January 3rd. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on January 4th. Take care.